So you have to understand that the real reason the left has been so successful in beating us up is because this idea of political correctness that the left employs is designed to make you shut up. And a little quick thought for you before we go on. We're often charges of racism always been leveled against conservatives and Republicans. But if you really think about it, the charge of racism only works against people who aren't racist. You go up to somebody who's a Nazi and you accuse them of being an anti-Semite, they don't go, oh man, I better shut up. Of course they're anti-Semites, they're proud of it. Klansmen are proud of being racist. Charges of being racist and bigots and homophobes and misogynists only work against people who aren't. They only work against good and decent people who are disgusted by the idea of doing that, so they shut up. And that's what we've done as a party. We basically just nodded our head and just kind of shuffled our feet and just simply refused to speak frankly about what we believe. So, just as a quick example before I get into the real guts of the evening, let's talk about what we believe, just as a subject that's commonly on people's minds today. What do we believe about guns? People say to me, what's your position on firearms? I say, well, I have a .45 automatic and I have an AR-15.
Yay.
They say, well, what, so you're going to try and defend this on the grounds of hunting? No, I'm not going to talk about my guns because of hunting, because I'm not worried about a deer coming in through my window at night and raping my girlfriend. That's not a concern I have. I have these weapons so that I can kill bad guys. What? Did you just say you have weapons so that you could kill people? Absolutely. I have a .45 automatic to kill bad guys at short range, and I have an AR-15 to make sure they don't get into short range. That's what it sounds like. Because when you speak like that, it gets people's attention, and it makes you think that maybe you have the courage of your convictions. Maybe you actually believe something. Maybe you're not just shuffling along and trying to be a little less Democrat than the Democrats. I have weapons to kill bad guys. I believe there are predators out there. We're the only species, one of very few species, that preys on itself. And I say to people, if you're in favor of gun control, no one watches a leopard chase down a gazelle on the plains of Africa and say that that gazelle doesn't have a right to use its horns and its hooves to defend itself. So you're telling me the problem that we're going to deal with, that we got too many leopards, you're saying the solution is to saw the horns off of the gazelle? That's going to make the leopards go away? Don't be ridiculous. They're predators. People need to defend themselves against these human predators. Now the argument isn't about guns anymore. Now the argument is about the human heart. Now the argument is about crime. Now we're not talking about gun control. Now we're talking about crime control. The left doesn't want to talk about these things. They only want to ban things that they don't have anything to do with. See, it's very simple, really. Once you really understand what you believe and you're not afraid to say so, everything gets very, very simple like this. I was at Oberlin College just at the end of the year. Oberlin College is probably the most liberal college in America. Oberlin College is where good ideas go to die. And after I was done, there was an 18-year-old white kid sitting up there in the auditorium, and he said, so you said during your speech that you're against affirmative action. I said, yeah, you're right, I sure am. They said, why are you against affirmative action? Taking the moral high ground, you see, showing he's a better person than I am. I'm an unfeeling, no good for nothing bigot. He's a highly advanced, morally sophisticated, very bright guy. And I said, I'm against affirmative action because I'm not a racist like you are. What do you mean? I said, you're the one who believes that black people should be able to get into a college with a 650 on their SATs instead of an 800 like a white kid. I don't believe black people are stupider than white people at all. I believe any black student that studies for a test can get in on the same standards as everyone else. Why are you such a miserable, low-life racist? Why do you have such a low opinion of black people that you think that they have to have a lower bar to get into college than a white kid? What's the matter with you? They don't know how to answer, you see, because everything that the left does politically is based on unearned moral superiority. My good friend Andrew Breitbart told me that lesson. He said, every single time you argue with these people, they will find a way to put themselves on a moral plane that you don't exist on, and if you can hear that dog whistle, you go and kick that dog whistle, and it's over for them. It's over for them. So, I have a plan for how we can defeat these people and never lose again. It's a very complicated plan. Sits here on this little index card. Now, excuse me, just for one moment, I need to ruin my future political career. Oh, that's so refreshing and so worth my shot at the presidency. Let me tell you what's on our side. And let me tell you why time is on our side if we have the wisdom to get in front of this wave and surf it instead of get washed behind it. There have been actually only 3 significant events that have happened in all of human history. Forget all the wars and the rise and falls of empires and civilizations, all that stuff. There's only 3 actual major tectonic changes that have occurred in human society, and we're in the middle of the 3rd one right now. The first wave of change was the agricultural age. We were hunters and gatherers back either to the Garden of Eden or back to 1 million years BC. As long as we've been human, we've been gathering berries and throwing spears at animals, and that took us through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years of human history. And then all of a sudden, about 7,000 years ago, in Baghdad, between the rivers, in Mesopotamia, they figured out how they could grow crops. And if they could grow their own food, enough food to last for a year, that meant that not everybody had to go out and hunt. Not everybody had to go out and make food. That meant that we could specialize. There could be guys that do nothing but make sandals, and this guy can be a poet, and this guy can be a philosopher, and this was the rise of cities. And this was the beginning of the agricultural age. Now this government, this idea of America, this government that I have right here in my pocket, here it sits, as P.G. O'Rourke says, the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution is a quarter the size of the owner's manual for 1998 Toyota Camry, and it manages to govern 300 million of the most unruly people in the world. But all of the ideas in the Constitution came to us from people who were a first-age agricultural people. Now, I know this is getting a little esoteric, but it's really important to understand. Our founders came from an agricultural society, so naturally the government that they designed dealt with agricultural type society. Very dispersed, very independent, very self-reliant, very much into protecting their own borders. The idea of gun control for people who lived on a border where you've got Indians and the British just never even entered their minds. So our entire idea of what government should be as a very dispersed, very centralized, very limited, very small power is based on this agricultural idea of America that our founders lived in. Now, right around the late 1800s and the early 1900s, the second great wave of human change occurred. It's called the Industrial Revolution. And what happened to America during the Industrial Revolution? Well, Thaddeus McCotter told me, turned me on to this idea. The Industrial Revolution required that large numbers of people lived very, very close together because factories require large amounts of materials in a very small space, and all of a sudden America became a very urbanized kind of a culture, very centralized kind of a culture, very industrialized top-down kind of a culture. And this is the point I'm trying to make to you now. Everything that goes on in Washington today, all of these power grabs, all of these unions, all of this gigantic federal power structure, this grab of power from the people that we loathe and despise so much, is doomed. It didn't matter whether Mitt Romney won or Barack Obama won. They might have would have been a lot happier if Mitt Romney won, but ultimately, when it's all said and done, it's doomed because the economy leads the government. Not the other way around. The government doesn't determine what kind of an economy we have. The economy determines what kind of a government we have. And this very vertical, very centralized industrial era economy, which is epitomized by something like IBM. We're all old enough to remember this, most of us are, right? When we grew up in the industrial age, before the information age hit, there were 3 television networks. You had a choice of ABC, CBS, or NBC, and that's why we watched Hee Haw on Sunday night, because there was literally nothing else on. Right? We had 3 car companies. We didn't have 17 car companies. We didn't have 200 cable channels. We had 3 TV networks, 1 phone company, 3 car companies. IBM was a company where you would start to work at 19 and you would retire with a gold watch at 65, and you had a retirement plan, and you had all of this seniority, all of this stuff. That's the result of an industrial era economy. But for 20 or 30 years now, we have been moving out of the industrial age, and this was Thad McCotter's great insight. Our economy is changing now. With this device right here in my hand, I can order steel from China right this second. Right now, I can make a phone call or send an email, and I can order steel for China. And Thad McCotter's observation, which I have been working with an awful lot, is so profound, because what it really means is that this giant, bloated, fat, stupid, monolithic, fossilized dinosaur of a government cannot possibly govern an economy that is this diversified, this small, this fast, this network, this global. It's going to fall down. It has to fall down. There's no way that this industrial era government can manage an information age economy. So why am I going to all the trouble to explain all of this to you? Well, it's because these changes are not only coming, they're basically here. And we have to stop thinking of Republicans as the party of tri-corner hats and mustaches, because everything that we love about America, everything that we love as conservatives, is not in our past, it's in our future. That's why the Democrats win elections, because they always talk about looking forward. But the great irony is, it's the Democrats with their big, union-driven, monolithic, massive state programs that can never be funded. They're the people who are living in the past, not us. We're the people that are living in the future. And if we can figure out how to put a big old R on that future economy, we will never lose another election again, ever. Because our story is a better story than their story is. Our vision for people is a better vision than their vision is.
President Whittle, would you...
Virtual president, I don't want the real guy coming out
okay. Would you enforce the immigration laws that are already on the books?
I would do more than enforce the immigration laws that are already on the books. I would utterly strengthen them. I would build a southern border around this country, and I would make it crystal clear that the United States of America is a sovereign nation that simply cannot be invaded at will.
Yay.
Now, people will say that I'm anti-immigrant. On the contrary, every single person in this room is descended from immigrants. Every single one of us is descended from immigrants, and I know my conservatives well enough to know that nothing moves us more than the sight of people who have stood in line and waited for years and filled out the forms and spent thousands and thousands of dollars to finally make it to their actual home. Ronald Reagan described these people as Americans who were born overseas, who were hurtling through the darkness towards home. Illegal immigration is not just a slap in the face, it's a spit in the eye of every single hardworking, honest, law-abiding American who happened to be born somewhere else, who went to the trouble to do things the right way and to come here legitimately like the rest of us. It's an insult, it's a mortal, deadly insult to somebody who spent all of their life savings and 5 years of their lives waiting in line to stand there so they can raise their hand and promise to become new people like the rest of us. As American as the people who got off the Mayflower. It's an utter insult to the sacrifices those people make in order to allow people to simply waltz across this border. And I'll go one step further and then we'll call it a night. People come to America really for two reasons. They're coming because of economic opportunity, or they're coming because of political oppression. Economic corruption and political oppression are both driven by the same thing, and that's lawlessness. People come to America, people die to come to America to escape lawlessness. And when I say they die to come to America, no one ever got shot going over the Berlin Wall to get into East Germany. Not once. That has never happened. There's never been a dentist who took his family down to Fort Lauderdale and loaded everybody up on inner tubes and sailed south to Cuba so they could get to the free health care. That's never happened. It's not 60-40, it's not 90-10, it's not 99-1. Every single one of those rafts is coming here. So why do people come here? They come here to escape lawlessness. And if the first thing you do when you come to this land of law in your escape from lawlessness is to break the law, aren't you bringing with you everything that you're trying to escape from? Who's going to defend that? We're not anti-immigrant. I'm not anti-immigrant in the slightest. I'm pro-immigrant. As a matter of fact, there are 30 or 40 or 50 people waiting in line right now who have PhD degrees and thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars in capital who are dying to get to this country. We should have said to France, if I was president of the United States, when they raised that tax rate to 75% and drove out Gerard Depardieu and Sarkozy. Do you know that when the French scared away Gerard Depardieu and Sarkozy, that's the same as America raising taxes so high that John Wayne and Ronald Reagan left to live in Canada? Do you imagine the cultural impact that had? As president of the United States, I would have said to the French businessmen, you people have worked hard your entire lives. Many of you had businesses for 3 generations. Come to America. We will give you a flat 15% tax rate that will never change. Bring your people, bring your companies, bring your families, bring your employees. Come here and never leave. We love you hard work, we love your money. You're welcome here. You don't have to go back and live under these socialist slaves anymore.